the hospital, the nurse asked, "How long has this been going on?" My blood ran cold. The fluorescent lights above the hospital bed made everything look sickly yellow, including the fresh bruises blooming across my ribs like some twisted garden. I kept my breathing shallow. Anything deeper sent lightning bolts of pain through my chest where Mark's steel-toed boot had found its mark 3 hours ago. Sarah Collins? The nurse appeared beside my bed, her scrubs decorated with cheerful cartoon cats that felt obscene given the circumstances. She was maybe 40, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and the sort of gentle voice that made broken people want to confess everything. "That's me," I whispered, my split lip making the words come out thick and slurred. She glanced at her tablet, then back at me, taking in the purple black eye that had swollen shut, the fingerprint bruises around my throat, the defensive wounds on my forearms where I'd tried to shield myself. Her expression remained professionally neutral, but I caught something flicker behind those kind eyes, recognition, maybe. Or pity. "I'm Jennifer, I'll be taking care of you tonight. The doctor ordered some x-rays for your ribs and left wrist." She paused, stylus hovering over her tablet. "Can you tell me what happened?" I'd rehearsed this part during the 20-minute Uber ride to the hospital, the driver shooting worried glances at me in his rearview mirror. I fell down the stairs in my apartment building. The railing broke and I tumbled backward. Jennifer nodded, making notes. "Standard procedure," I told myself. She has to ask. "And when did this fall occur?" "Around 9 p.m. tonight. Maybe 9:15. The lie came easily now. I'd gotten good at lying over the past 8 months, ever since Mark's bad days started becoming the norm instead of the exception. "I see. More notes." Then she looked up, and her next question hit me like a physical blow. "How long has this been going on?" My blood ran cold. The question hung in the sterile air between us, loaded with implications that made my heart race despite the pain medication they'd given me. She knew. Somehow, she knew this wasn't about any stairs or broken railings. "I'm sorry?" I tried to buy time, but my voice came out too high, too shaky. Jennifer set down her tablet and pulled up a chair, the kind of deliberate movement that meant we were about to have a very different conversation than the one I'd prepared for. "Sarah, I've been doing this for 16 years. I've seen a lot of falls, and I've seen a lot of other things too." Her voice was gentle but firm. "Those bruises on your throat, they're consistent with manual strangulation. The defensive wounds on your arms. The pattern of injuries. This isn't from falling downstairs." I wanted to deny it, to stick to my story, but something about her matter-of-fact tone made the lies crumble in my throat. Instead, I found myself thinking about the phone hidden in my purse, containing 47 photos and 12 audio recordings documenting Mark's escalating violence over the past 6 months. The nurse, Jennifer, was still waiting for an answer, her pen poised over forms that could change everything. Behind her, I could see other medical staff moving through the hallway, and I wondered how many other women had sat in beds like this one, faced with the same impossible question. How long has this been going on? If only she knew that I'd been counting every single day. I stared at Jennifer's expectant face, my mind racing through calculations. 8 months, 2 weeks, and 3 days since the first time Mark shoved me into the kitchen counter hard enough to leave bruises. But I couldn't say that. "Not yet." "I don't know what you mean," I whispered, hating how weak I sounded. Jennifer leaned forward slightly. "Sarah, I need to ask you some direct questions, and I want you to know that anything you tell me stays between us unless you give me permission otherwise. Are you in a relationship?" "Yes." The word slipped out before I could stop it. "Does your partner live with you?" My throat felt like sandpaper. "Yes." "Where is he tonight?" That one almost made me laugh, if laughing wouldn't have felt like being stabbed in the ribs all over again. Mark was probably passed out on our couch right now, empty beer bottles scattered around him like evidence of his own destruction. He'd drink himself unconscious after his episodes, his word, not mine, like they were seizures instead of calculated acts of violence. "Home," I managed. Jennifer made a note, then looked back at me. "Does he know you're here?" "No." At least that was true. Mark had been screaming at me about the overdue electric bill when he lost control tonight. Apparently, I was supposed to magically make my $42,000 salary stretch to cover his unemployment and his nightly 12-pack habit. When I tried to explain that we were already $1,200 behind on rent, he backhanded me so hard I'd seen stars. The beating that followed was worse than usual. More systematic. He'd taken his time, making sure to hit places that wouldn't show if I wore long sleeves to work tomorrow. Except tonight he'd miscalculated, or maybe he just didn't care anymore. The kick to my ribs when I was already on the ground, that was new. So was the way he'd wrapped his hands around my throat and squeezed until black spots danced at the edges of my vision. "Sarah, I'm going to be very direct with you." Jennifer's voice cut through my memories. "We have protocols here for situations like this. I can connect you with a social worker tonight. We can help you make a safety plan." Safety plan. As if Mark was a natural disaster you could prepare for instead of a 190-pound man with anger management issues and a drinking problem. As if I hadn't already been working on my own version of a safety plan for months. "I appreciate that, but there's also the option to file a police report while you're here," she continued. "The injuries are fresh. We can photograph everything, document the pattern. It would be strong evidence." Evidence. My hand instinctively moved toward my purse, where my phone held months of carefully collected proof. Audio recordings of Mark's threats, photos of bruises in various stages of healing, even a video I'd managed to capture last month when he'd thrown a glass at my head. I'd been building a case against him without him knowing, waiting for the right moment. But was this it? Was tonight the moment I'd been preparing for, or was I not ready yet? Jennifer followed my gaze to my purse. "Is there something you need from there? Someone you want to call?" I shook my head quickly. "No, this is a lot to process." "I understand. But Sarah, if this is what I think it is, it's probably going to get worse. They almost always escalate." She paused, studying my face. "Has he ever tried to strangle you before tonight?" The question hit me like ice water. Because the answer was yes, twice in the past month, and I had the audio from the second incident to prove it. The silence stretched between us as Jennifer waited for my answer about strangulation. My throat felt tight, not from Mark's hands this time, but from the weight of the truth I was carrying. Once, I lied, because admitting it was twice felt like crossing a line I wasn't ready for. Last month. Jennifer's pen moved across her tablet. And tonight makes twice that you know of. What do you mean, that I know of? She looked up, her expression grave. Sarah, strangulation often happens during blackouts, yours, not his. Many victims don't remember every incident. The petechiae in your eyes, those tiny red spots, indicate significant pressure was applied to your neck. This wasn't brief. I touched my face reflexively. In the bathroom mirror at home, I'd seen those spots scattered across my cheeks like freckles made of blood, but I hadn't known what they meant. How long was he choking you tonight? The memory came back in fragments. Mark's thumbs pressing into my windpipe while he called me worthless. The taste of copper in my mouth. Clawing at his wrists, that's where those defensive wounds came from. Time had moved strangely, like being underwater. Maybe 30 seconds? I'm not sure. 30 seconds is a long time, Sarah. Long enough to cause serious damage. Jennifer leaned closer. I need you to understand something. When domestic violence escalates to strangulation, the statistics change dramatically. The likelihood of him eventually killing you increases by 750%. The number hit me like a physical blow. 750%. I'd read articles about domestic violence, knew the statistics about women who died at the hands of their partners, but hearing it applied to my specific situation made everything feel suddenly, terrifyingly real. That can't be right, I whispered. It's from a study of over 300 cases. Sarah, I've seen what comes after nights like this one. Sometimes the women don't make it to the hospital the next time. My phone buzzed in my purse. Then again. 3 more times in rapid succession. Even from here, I knew it was Mark. He'd probably woken up and found me gone, seen the blood on the kitchen floor where I'd hit my head on the cabinet corner. Jennifer heard it too. Is that him? I nodded, my stomach clenching. He doesn't know I'm here. What do you think he'll do when he figures it out? That was the question I'd been avoiding all night. Mark's rage was always worse when he felt like he was losing control of a situation. Me disappearing for hours without explanation would trigger every possessive instinct he had. By morning, he'd be calling my work, my sister, maybe even filing a missing person report to make himself look like the concerned boyfriend. The phone buzzed again. Then again. He's going to be really angry, I admitted. Angry enough to hurt you worse than this? I thought about the look in his eyes tonight, right before he'd wrapped his hands around my throat. Cold and calculating, like he was deciding something. Like he was crossing his own internal line. Maybe. The word came out as barely a whisper. Jennifer stood up, moving with sudden purpose. I'm going to get Dr. Martinez and our social worker. We need to talk about immediate safety planning. Wait. The word shot out of me before I could stop it. What if I told you I already had evidence? Months of it? She stopped in the doorway, turning back. What kind of evidence? My hand moved to my purse again, to the phone that contained everything I'd been secretly documenting. The kind that could put him away for a long time. Jennifer's eyes widened slightly. Sarah, how long have you been planning this? The question hung in the air as my phone buzzed again, and I realized that tonight might be the moment I'd been preparing for all along. 6 months, I said quietly, watching Jennifer's face for her reaction. I've been documenting everything for 6 months. She stepped back into the room, closing the door behind her. Can you tell me more about that? My phone buzzed 3 more times in quick succession. Mark was getting frantic now, which meant I had maybe 20 minutes before he started calling hospitals. He'd done it once before when I'd gone to my sister's without telling him, called every emergency room in the county claiming I was suicidal and he was worried about me. The performance had been so convincing that when I finally came home with groceries, he'd managed to make me feel guilty for scaring him. I started taking pictures after he gave me a black eye that lasted 2 weeks, I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. I told everyone at work I'd been in a car accident, but lying to my coworkers every day made me realize how bad things had gotten. Jennifer pulled her chair closer. What kind of documentation do you have? Photos. 47 of them, all with timestamps and location data enabled. Audio recordings of 12 separate incidents, including one from 3 weeks ago where he threatened to put me in the ground if I ever tried to leave him. The words tumbled out faster now, like a dam breaking. I even have receipts showing I'm the only one paying rent and utilities, which proves financial abuse. Sarah, that's incredibly thorough. My sister Kate works as a paralegal. She told me once that most domestic violence cases fall apart because there's not enough evidence. It's just he said she said, and the woman usually drops the charges anyway. I shifted in the bed, wincing as pain shot through my ribs. I decided I wouldn't be one of those statistics. So you've been building a case. Every bruise, every threat, every time he destroyed something that belonged to me. I have a video of him punching a hole in the bathroom door because I locked myself in there during one of his rages. Another one where he threw my laptop against the wall because I got a text from a male coworker about a project. Jennifer was taking notes again, but her expression had shifted from concern to something that looked almost like admiration. How did you manage to record things without him knowing? Voice memo app with the screen turned off. I'd start recording whenever he came home drunk, which was most nights. The phone stays in my pocket or purse. I paused, thinking about all the careful planning that had gone into staying invisible while documenting everything. He's not as smart as he thinks he is. Mark assumes that because I'm quiet, I'm helpless. My phone erupted in a rapid-fire series of buzzes. 7 messages in 10 seconds. He's panicking, I said, glancing at my purse. This is actually perfect. Perfect how? Because now he'll leave a digital trail of his reaction to me being missing. If I'm lucky, he'll send something threatening or incriminating. I looked up at Jennifer. Can you keep me here overnight for observation? With your rib injuries, absolutely. But Sarah, if you have all this evidence, why didn't you go to the police before tonight? That was the question I'd been asking myself for weeks. Because I needed it to be enough. One incident, he gets charged with simple assault and maybe gets probation. But a pattern of escalating abuse over 6 months, with documentation of financial control and death threats? That's a felony case. And tonight? Tonight he crossed the line with strangulation. Kate told me that's what prosecutors call a violence enhancer. It turns everything into more serious charges. I took a shaky breath. I think I finally have enough to make sure he goes to prison instead of just getting a slap on the wrist. Jennifer stared at me for a long moment. You've been planning your own rescue. For 183 days, I said. And counting. Jennifer was quiet for a moment, processing what I just told her. Then my phone exploded with another barrage of messages, 12 in rapid succession, the buzzing so constant it sounded like an angry wasp trapped in my purse. Jesus, Jennifer muttered. How many is that now? Maybe 30 in the last 10 minutes. I could picture Mark pacing our apartment, his rage building with each unanswered text. He's probably destroying things right now. Last time I didn't respond fast enough, he threw my grandmother's china cabinet down the stairs. Do you want to see what he's saying? Part of me did, but the smarter part, the part that had been carefully documenting everything for 6 months, knew better. Not yet. Let him spiral completely first. The worse he gets, the better it is for my case. Jennifer glanced toward the door. I should mention, hospital security cameras captured you arriving alone in that Uber. The driver also made a statement to the front desk about your condition when he helped you inside. That's more evidence. The Uber receipt will have a pickup location too, I realized. Our apartment address, with a timestamp showing exactly when I left. Everything was building into a timeline that would be impossible for Mark to dispute. My phone buzzed again, but this time it was different, a phone call instead of a text. Mark's name flashed on the screen through the fabric of my purse, and we both heard the muffled ringtone. Escalation, Jennifer said grimly. Should we answer it? No, but I want to record his voicemail. I pulled out my phone, wincing at the movement. The screen showed 43 missed text messages and now this call. Can you help me set up a recording app to capture whatever message he leaves? Jennifer looked uncertain. Is that legal? In New York, you only need one-party consent for recording phone calls. Since it's my voicemail, I'm consenting to record it. Kate had drilled me on this months ago. Know your rights. Know what evidence will hold up in court. The call went to voicemail, and immediately my phone rang again. Then again. He's going to keep calling until I answer, I said. This is actually good. It shows obsessive behavior, inability to respect boundaries. Between the second and third call, a text came through that was long enough to make my phone buzz for 5 full seconds. Then another. And another. Those are long messages, Jennifer observed. Which means he's getting emotional. Mark's most incriminating when he's emotional. I looked at her. In 6 months of documentation, I've learned his patterns. First he panics, then he gets angry, then he gets threatening. We're probably entering the angry phase right now. And the threatening phase? That's when he usually says things that would interest prosecutors. Another call. Then 2 more rapid-fire texts. Jennifer stood up. I'm going to get Dr. Martinez and our social worker like I said. But first, Sarah, are you absolutely sure you're ready for this? Once we start the formal documentation process tonight, once you file that police report, there's no going back. He's going to know you're done protecting him. I stopped protecting him the day I took the first photograph. But even as I said it, my stomach clenched with fear. Mark's retaliation would be swift and vicious. How long do domestic violence arrests usually take? If you file tonight, with injuries this documented, they could pick him up within hours. Hours. I thought about Mark alone in our apartment, drinking and raging and destroying whatever he could get his hands on. By the time the police arrived, there would probably be even more evidence, holes in walls, broken furniture, neighbors who'd heard him screaming. There's something else, I said as Jennifer reached for the door handle. I've been saving money. Small amounts, cash back from grocery stores, birthday money from my parents. I have $2,847 hidden in a safety deposit box that Mark doesn't know about. That shows premeditation for leaving. It's good evidence of your state of mind, that you felt threatened enough to plan an escape. My phone rang again. The 4th call in 3 minutes. Jennifer? When you come back with the social worker, bring someone who can help me file a restraining order too. I want everything in motion before he figures out which hospital I'm at. She nodded and opened the door, then paused. For what it's worth, Sarah, what you've done, documenting everything, planning your safety, building a real case, it's the smartest thing I've seen in 16 years of doing this job. After she left, I stared at my phone as it rang a 5th time. 48 text messages now. 5 missed calls. And the night was far from over. Mark had no idea that every buzz, every call, every desperate message was just adding to the mountain of evidence that would finally put him behind bars where he belonged. After Jennifer left, the silence in the room felt deafening compared to the constant buzzing of my phone. 51 text messages now. 6 missed calls. I finally decided to look at what Mark was sending, knowing I needed to see how far he was spiraling. The first few messages were typical Mark, confused and demanding. Where the fuck are you? Sarah, answer me. Your car is here, but you're not. I know you're seeing this. But as I scrolled down, watching the timestamps, I could track his descent into panic and rage. The messages got longer, more erratic. I found blood in the kitchen. What happened? Are you hurt? Why didn't you tell me? Sarah, I'm scared something bad happened to you. Please just text me back. This isn't funny anymore. I called your sister and she said she hasn't heard from you. That stopped me cold. He'd called Kate. My sister knew better than to tell Mark anything, but she'd also know something was seriously wrong if he was calling her at midnight claiming I was missing. She was probably sitting by her phone right now, debating whether to drive to our apartment or start calling hospitals herself. The messages kept getting worse. I checked with the Hendersons upstairs. They heard yelling but nothing else. Mrs. Chen in 4B said she saw an Uber outside around 9:30. I know you left in that fucking Uber, Sarah. My blood went cold. Mark was canvassing the neighbors, playing the concerned boyfriend while gathering information. But he was also creating witnesses who could testify that he'd been at home, conscious and alert enough to conduct a methodical search for me. That undermined any potential claim that he'd been too drunk to remember what happened. The next batch of messages showed him transitioning into the anger phase I'd predicted. This is bullshit, Sarah. You can't just disappear without telling me. We live together. You don't get to just leave. Whatever you're doing, whoever you're with, this stops now. Then came the one that made my hands shake. I know you went to a hospital I called Mercy General and NYU already. They wouldn't tell me anything, but I know you're hurt and this is your way of making me look bad. He was calling hospitals. Systematically working his way through them, trying to track me down. Which meant I had maybe an hour before he called this one, maybe less if he'd started with the closest ones to our apartment. My phone rang again, the 7th call. This time I watched it go to voicemail, then immediately checked the message. Mark's voice came through the speaker slurred and increasingly desperate. Sarah, baby, please pick up. I don't know what happened, but I know you're hurt and I'm going crazy not knowing where you are. Just tell me which hospital and I'll come get you, okay? We can figure this out together. Please don't shut me out like this. The performance was almost convincing. If I hadn't been lying in a hospital bed with his handprints around my throat, I might have believed he was genuinely worried. But I knew this voice, the careful modulation, the rehearsed concern. Mark was smart enough to know that voicemails could be used as evidence, so he was crafting his narrative. Another text came through. I talked to your work, they said you seemed fine today, so whatever happened must have been after you got home. Now he was establishing a timeline, trying to narrow down when I'd been injured. But what he didn't realize was that he was also creating a record of his own actions after I left, proving he was sober enough to make multiple phone calls and conduct interviews with neighbors in my workplace. The door opened and Jennifer returned with 2 other people, a tall black woman in a white coat who must be Dr. Martinez, and a younger man in khakis and a polo shirt carrying a clipboard. Sarah, this is Dr. Martinez and David Chen, our social worker, Jennifer said. I briefed them on your situation. Dr. Martinez moved to check my chart while David pulled up another chair. Jennifer tells me you've been documenting abuse for several months, he said. I'd like to help you file a police report tonight, but first I need to know, has your partner tried to contact you since you've been here? I held up my phone, showing the screen full of notifications. 54 text messages, 7 phone calls, and he's currently calling hospitals trying to find me. David's eyebrows rose. In how long? About 40 minutes. Dr. Martinez looked up from my chart. That's obsessive contact. Combined with the strangulation injuries, we're looking at stalking charges in addition to assault. My phone rang again. The 8th call. Should we answer it this time? I asked. Let him incriminate himself in real time? David nodded. Actually, yes. But I want to record it officially, and I want to coach you on what to say first. As my phone continued ringing, I realized that everything I'd planned for 6 months was finally coming together. Mark's desperation was making him sloppy, creating evidence faster than I'd ever managed to collect on my own. The trap I'd been setting was about to snap shut. David Chen pulled out a small recording device and set it on the bedside table. Okay, Sarah, when you answer, I want you to stay calm and factual. Don't accuse him of anything directly, but don't lie about where you are either. Let him do most of the talking. My phone had gone silent for exactly 37 seconds before it started ringing again, the 9th call. Dr. Martinez finished reviewing my x-rays and nodded to David. 3 fractured ribs, hairline fracture in your left wrist, and severe soft tissue damage, she said quietly. More than enough for felony assault charges. I swiped to answer the call, my hand trembling slightly. Hello? Sarah. Jesus Christ, where are you? I've been going out of my mind. I'm at the hospital, Mark. My voice came out steadier than I felt. Which hospital? I'll come right now. Are you okay? What happened? David was taking notes, capturing Mark's immediate response. No surprise that I was injured, no questions about what had happened to me. Just demands about location. I can't have visitors right now, I said carefully. What do you mean you can't have visitors? Sarah, I'm your boyfriend. We live together. What the hell is going on? There it was, the edge creeping into his voice. The controlled concern was already cracking. The doctors want to keep me for observation. I have some broken ribs. Broken ribs? How did you break your ribs? But he asked it too quickly, like he was reading from a script he'd already prepared. I fell. I stuck to the story I'd given Jennifer, watching David's face. Fell where? Sarah, you're scaring me. I found blood in the kitchen, the neighbors heard shouting, and now you're in some hospital with broken ribs? This doesn't make any sense. Mark, I need to go. The nurse. No, wait. Don't hang up. Just tell me which hospital. I've already called Mercy General, NYU, Mount Sinai, and Bellevue. I know you're not at any of those. My blood chilled. He called 4 hospitals already, which meant he was working systematically through Manhattan. We were at Presbyterian, which would probably be his next call anyway. Why are you calling hospitals looking for me? Because my girlfriend disappeared with blood on the kitchen floor. Because I care about you. His voice was rising now, the careful performance slipping. Sarah, you're being ridiculous. Just tell me where you are. David held up a note, keep him talking. I'll call you tomorrow when I'm feeling better. Tomorrow? You're staying overnight? Now Mark sounded genuinely panicked. Sarah, this is insane. You can't just leave without talking to me. We need to figure out what happened. You don't know what happened? The question hung in the air for 3 full seconds. When Mark answered, his tone had shifted completely, colder, more calculated. How would I know what happened if you won't tell me? I came home and found you gone. For all I know, someone broke in and hurt you. David was scribbling furiously now. Dr. Martinez had moved closer to listen. Someone broke in? I don't know, Sarah. Maybe. The front door was unlocked, there was blood, you were missing. What am I supposed to think? He was already building his defense, creating alternative explanations. But he was also revealing details, admitting he'd come home to find evidence of violence, admitting I was missing for hours before he started his search. Mark, I really need to. Wait. Sarah, are you talking to someone else right now? I can hear voices. My heart stopped. David immediately muted the recording device. The TV, I said quickly. Turn it off. I want to talk to you without distractions. The demand in his voice was unmistakable now. Even from a hospital bed with broken ribs, even when he didn't know where I was, Mark was still trying to control me. I have to go, I said. Sarah, if you hang up on me, I swear to God. I ended the call before he could finish the threat, but the damage was done. David had caught every word. Well, he said, stopping the recording. That was illuminating. My phone immediately started ringing again. I let the call go to voicemail, watching the screen light up with Mark's name for the 10th time. David was already replaying the recording we just captured, his expression growing more serious with each word. He's establishing an alibi, David said, pausing to playback. The story about coming home to find you missing, the unlocked door, suggesting an intruder, that's not panic, that's preparation. Dr. Martinez nodded grimly. In my experience, genuine concern sounds very different. He was fishing for information about your injuries, not expressing shock that you had them. My phone buzzed with a new voicemail notification, then immediately started ringing again. Through the door, I could hear the normal sounds of a hospital at night, distant conversations, rolling equipment, the soft beeping of monitors. But in this room, everything felt charged with tension. There's something else, I said, pulling up my text messages. Look at the timeline of his calls to other hospitals. David leaned in as I showed him the timestamps on Mark's earlier texts. He said he called Mercy General, NYU, Mount Sinai, and Bellevue. But look, he texted me about calling Mercy at 11:47 p.m. I've been here since 10:15. He waited over an hour before starting his search. That's a significant delay, Dr. Martinez observed. If he genuinely thought you were injured and missing, why wait? Jennifer, who had been quietly taking notes, looked up. What do you think he was doing during that hour? I thought about Mark's patterns, his methodical approach to damage control whenever his violence went too far. Cleaning up. Getting his story straight. Maybe calling his brother Danny for advice. He's a cop in Jersey, and Mark always runs to him when he's in trouble. My phone rang again, call number 12. This time, when it went to voicemail, Mark's message was markedly different from the concerned boyfriend performance he'd given earlier. Sarah, I know you're playing games with me. I don't know what you think you're doing, but this stops now. You live in my apartment, you drive my car, you don't get to just disappear whenever you feel like it. Call me back in the next 10 minutes or I'm filing a missing person report and telling them you're having a mental health crisis. The threat hit me like ice water. Mark knew exactly what he was doing. A missing person report would create an official narrative painting him as the worried partner and me as unstable. It would also give him legal justification to involve police in tracking me down. Can he actually do that? I asked David. Unfortunately, yes. And if he reports you as having a mental health emergency, they'll take it seriously. David was already reaching for his phone. But we can get ahead of it. I'm calling Detective Rivera from the Domestic Violence Unit right now. If we file first, his missing person report looks like what it is, retaliation. Dr. Martinez checked her watch. It's almost 1 a.m. How long do these reports usually take? For a case this well documented? Maybe 90 minutes to take Sarah's statement and get the initial warrant paperwork started. David was already dialing. The bigger question is whether we can get Mark arrested tonight before he escalates further. As if summoned by our conversation, my phone lit up with another call. But this time, it wasn't Mark's name on the screen, it was my sister Kate. He called her again, I realized, my stomach dropping. Kate never calls this late unless something's really wrong. I answered immediately. Kate? Sarah, thank God. Are you okay? Mark just called me screaming about how you've been missing for hours and he thinks someone hurt you. He wants me to file a missing person report because he says you're not thinking clearly. Kate's voice was tight with worry and suspicion. But Sarah, he sounded drunk. Really drunk. And some of the things he was saying. What kind of things? He kept talking about how you'd been acting strange lately and how he was worried you might hurt yourself. Sarah, that doesn't sound like you at all. It sounds like he's setting up a narrative, I finished. Kate, I'm at Presbyterian Hospital. Mark put me here. The silence on the other end stretched for 5 full seconds. When Kate spoke again, her voice was deadly quiet. How bad? Bad enough that I'm finally ready to use all that evidence we talked about. Jesus. Okay. Sarah, don't worry about the missing person report. I'll handle Mark if he calls again. You focus on talking to police. Do you need me to come down there? Before I could answer, David hung up his own call and turned to us with an expression of grim satisfaction. Detective Rivera is 20 minutes out, he said. And Sarah, you're going to want to hear this, Mark's brother Danny? He's currently under internal investigation for domestic violence incidents involving his own wife. His advice isn't going to carry much weight with NYPD. My phone buzzed with another text from Mark, 10 minutes Sarah or I'm making that call. I showed it to David, who smiled for the first time all night. Actually, I hope he does file that report. Because Detective Rivera is going to be very interested in a man who beats his girlfriend unconscious, then tries to have her declared mentally unstable when she seeks medical help. The trap was closing faster than even I had planned. Kate was still on the line when my phone exploded with an incoming call from Mark, our 13th of the night. I could see both names on my screen, and the irony wasn't lost on me that the two most important people in my life were trying to reach me simultaneously for completely different reasons. Kate, I have to go. Mark's calling again and the police need to hear this. Sarah, wait, but I'd already switched calls, nodding to David to start recording. Your 10 minutes aren't up yet, I said, not bothering with hello. Don't get smart with me, Sarah. Mark's voice was different now, harder, more focused. The sloppy drunk from earlier had been replaced by something calculating and cold. I just got off the phone with Danny. My blood chilled. His brother the cop, the one currently under investigation himself. And he told me some very interesting things about what happens to women who make false accusations against their boyfriends. Especially women with a history of mental health issues. I don't have a history of mental health issues. Really? Because I just remembered that prescription bottle in your medicine cabinet. Lexapro, 10 milligrams. For anxiety and depression. The smugness in his voice made my skin crawl. Danny says that's going to be very relevant when I explain to the police how you've been having episodes lately. Paranoid thoughts. Violent outbursts. David's pen was flying across his notepad. Dr. Martinez looked horrified. But I felt something unexpected wash over me, relief. Because Mark was finally showing his true face on a recorded line with witnesses present. Violent outbursts? I kept my voice level. Can you describe those for me? Like 3 weeks ago when you threw a plate at the wall during dinner. Or last month when you started screaming at me in the grocery store parking lot. Mark's lies were so smooth, so confident. I've been documenting your behavior, Sarah. Dates, times, witnesses. Mrs. Chen saw you throwing things off our balcony during one of your fits. Each word was a carefully crafted fiction, but Mark was making a crucial mistake. He was giving specific details that could be fact-checked, creating a counter-narrative that would fall apart under investigation. What did I throw off the balcony? Your laptop. Your books. That little ceramic bird your grandmother gave you. Mark's voice took on a false sadness. I tried to stop you, but you were in one of your states. Mrs. Chen called building management because she was worried about people getting hit on the sidewalk. I almost laughed. The ceramic bird was sitting safely in my desk drawer at work. I'd hidden it there 2 months ago after Mark threatened to smash it during one of his rages. The laptop he'd thrown against the wall himself, and I had video footage to prove it. Mark, why would I throw my grandmother's bird off the balcony? Because you weren't thinking clearly. Just like tonight. His voice dropped to what he probably thought was a caring tone. Sarah, I know you're scared and confused right now. The medication changes can make you paranoid, make you think people are hurting you when they're trying to help. But I'm here for you, baby. I always have been. David held up a note, asterisk, keep him talking about the episodes. Asterisk. How long have you been documenting my behavior? Since the first incident. About 8 months ago, right after you started therapy. Mark was building an elaborate timeline that painted me as progressively unstable. Dr. Reeves warned us this might happen when she prescribed the Lexapro. Memory issues, paranoid delusions, self-harm behaviors. That was his first major mistake. I'd never been to therapy. I'd never seen anyone named Dr. Reeves. And my Lexapro prescription, all 5 milligrams of it, was from my regular physician for mild work-related anxiety, started just 3 months ago. Mark was creating a fictional medical history that could be easily disproven, but more importantly, he was revealing just how long he'd been planning for this moment. Dr. Reeves? I repeated, letting confusion color my voice. Mark, I've never seen anyone named Dr. Reeves. The silence on the other end lasted just a beat too long. Of course you have, Sarah. You're not remembering clearly because of the medication adjustments. She's the one who referred you to the psychiatric unit at Mount Sinai last month. David's eyes widened. He scribbled frantically, he's creating false medical records, major felony. I was never at Mount Sinai psychiatric unit, I said calmly. Yes, you were. For 3 days. I had the discharge papers. Mark's voice carried absolute conviction, but I could hear something underneath it, the sound of someone digging their own grave. Danny helped me understand the legal process for getting someone committed when they're a danger to themselves. Dr. Martinez looked stunned. She pulled out her tablet and started typing rapidly, probably checking my actual medical history in the system. Mark, what date was I supposedly at Mount Sinai? October 15th through the 18th. You called in sick to work, remember? Told them you had food poisoning? His fabrication was getting more detailed, more specific. I visited you every day, brought you those magazines you like. I felt a surge of cold satisfaction. October 15th was my nephew's birthday party. I had dozens of photos with timestamps showing me at Kate's house in Brooklyn, surrounded by family. My work email logs would show I'd responded to messages throughout those days from my home computer. And Dr. Reeves prescribed the increased Lexapro dosage after that stay? Exactly. She said you might experience memory gaps and confusion as side effects, which is why you don't remember clearly. Mark sounded pleased with himself, like he was solving a puzzle. Sarah, this is exactly what she warned us about. You're having an episode right now. David held up his phone, showing me a text, Detective Rivera is here. Through the door's glass panel, I could see a middle-aged Latina woman in a blazer talking to Jennifer at the nurse's station. She looked exactly like someone who'd spent 20 years dealing with men like Mark. I need to go now, I told Mark. No, Sarah, listen to me. I'm coming to get you. Danny's meeting me there with some paperwork that will help the doctors understand your medical history. My blood went cold. What kind of paperwork? A psychiatric hold authorization. For your own safety. Mark's voice had turned gentle again, but there was steel underneath. I can't let you hurt yourself worse than you already have. The threat was clear. Mark and his cop brother were planning to have me involuntarily committed based on fabricated medical records. If they succeeded, I'd be locked in a psychiatric facility while Mark had free access to our apartment, my evidence, everything I'd spent months building. Mark, I'll be there in 20 minutes. Danny's bringing the commitment papers and Dr. Reeves' files. Everything's going to be okay, baby. I'm going to take care of you. He hung up before I could respond. David was already moving toward the door. That was a direct threat to have you falsely committed. Detective Rivera needs to hear that recording immediately. My phone buzzed with a final text, asterisk, see you soon. Don't talk to anyone until I get there, asterisk. Dr. Martinez looked up from her tablet. Sarah, I've checked every database we have access to. You've never been treated at Mount Sinai psychiatric unit. There's no Dr. Reeves in their system. And your Lexapro prescription history shows exactly what you told us, 5 milligrams, 3 months ago, from Dr. Patricia Wong at Manhattan Primary Care. Through the window, I could see Detective Rivera walking toward our room, her expression all business. They're not just coming to manipulate me into leaving, I realized, my voice barely a whisper. They're coming to disappear me completely. Detective Rivera entered my room with a kind of presence that immediately changed the atmosphere, confident, alert, and carrying herself like someone who'd seen every variation of domestic violence manipulation in her 20-year career. She was maybe 50, with graying hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and eyes that missed nothing. Ms. Collins, I'm Detective Rivera. I understand we have a situation developing. She pulled out a small recording device and set it next to David's. I was listening outside and heard the end of that phone conversation. Did he just threaten to have you involuntarily committed? Based on fabricated medical records, I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. He claims I was hospitalized at Mount Sinai Psychiatric Unit in October, treated by a Dr. Reeves who doesn't exist. Detective Rivera's expression darkened. Falsifying medical documents to support forced psychiatric commitment is a Class C felony. If his brother's involved as a police officer, that's corruption charges too. She sat down, opening a thick folder. Now, David briefed me about your evidence collection. I need to see everything you have. I pulled out my phone with trembling fingers. 6 months of careful documentation, finally about to serve its purpose. 47 photographs with timestamps and location data. 12 audio recordings of verbal threats and physical violence. Video footage of him destroying my property. I swiped through the files. Plus financial records showing he hasn't paid rent or utilities in 4 months while drinking away his unemployment checks. Detective Rivera examined each photo methodically, her jaw tightening as she scrolled through the progression of injuries. This shows clear escalation over time. The strangulation marks in the most recent photos, when were these taken? Tonight, in the hospital bathroom about an hour ago. The timestamps will show they match my admission time. Smart thinking. She looked up at Dr. Martinez. How did the injuries photograph compare to what you documented in your examination? Completely consistent. The ligature marks around her throat, the defensive wounds on her forearms, the bruising patterns on her torso, everything matches manual strangulation and systematic beating. Detective Rivera played one of my audio recordings from 3 weeks ago, Mark's voice filling the small room. Asterisk, if you ever try to leave me, Sarah, I will put you in the ground. Do you understand me? I will fucking bury you where nobody will ever find you. Asterisk. Death threats with specific language about disposal of remains, she noted grimly. That's aggravated criminal threats, possibly conspiracy to commit murder depending on how seriously the DA wants to pursue it. My phone buzzed with an incoming call, Kate again. Detective Rivera nodded for me to answer. Kate, what's wrong? Sarah, Mark just called me back. He says he's driving to Presbyterian Hospital right now with some police officer to collect you for psychiatric evaluation. He claims you've been having a psychotic break and that I need to support the family in getting you help. Kate's voice was tight with anger. He also said if I interfere or try to contact you tonight, he'll have me arrested for obstruction. Detective Rivera held out her hand for the phone. Ms. Collins? This is Detective Rivera, NYPD. I need you to know that your sister is currently under police protection as a victim of domestic violence. Any threats made against you for supporting her could result in additional charges against Mark. I could hear Kate's sharp intake of breath. Detective, how much danger is Sarah in right now? Significant danger. The perpetrator is en route here with what appears to be falsified commitment documents, possibly accompanied by a police officer under investigation. Detective Rivera checked her watch. We have maybe 15 minutes before they arrive. Through the window, I could see hospital security guards taking positions in the hallway. Jennifer appeared in the doorway with 2 more people I didn't recognize, both in plain clothes but with the unmistakable bearing of law enforcement. Back up? I asked Detective Rivera. Detective Walsh from Internal Affairs, and Detective Chen from the DA's office. If Mark's brother shows up with fake psychiatric cold papers, we want multiple witnesses and someone specifically investigating police corruption. She turned back to my phone. Ms. Collins, I need you to stay exactly where you are tonight. Don't answer any calls from Mark or anyone claiming to represent him. Kate's voice was small through the speaker. What happens when they get to the hospital? Detective Rivera's smile was sharp and entirely without humor. They're going to walk directly into a felony arrest situation with multiple detectives, hospital security, and 6 months' worth of evidence waiting for them. My phone lit up with another call from Mark. Detective Rivera nodded for me to decline it, then immediately started coordinating with the other officers in the hallway. He's probably 10 minutes out, she said, checking her radio. Sarah, I need you to understand, once we arrest him tonight, this becomes a very serious criminal case. Are you prepared for that level of scrutiny and legal process? I thought about the ceramic bird sitting safely in my desk drawer, about the fabricated psychiatric records, about Mark's confident voice threatening to have me disappeared into a mental health facility. I've been preparing for this for 183 days, I said. I'm ready. Detective Rivera was coordinating with hospital security when my phone started buzzing with rapid-fire text messages. Not from Mark this time, from a number I didn't recognize. Asterisk Sarah, this is Danny Castellanos, Mark's brother. NYPD officer badge number 4721. Your boyfriend called me about your psychiatric emergency, asterisk. Asterisk, I'm en route to Presbyterian with proper documentation for your 72-hour hold. Do not leave the building, asterisk. Asterisk, Mark explained about your medication issues and violent episodes. I have Dr. Reeves' treatment notes and Mount Sinai discharge papers, asterisk. Asterisk, this is for your own safety. Cooperate when we arrive, asterisk. Detective Rivera read the messages over my shoulder, her expression growing darker with each word. He's identifying himself as an active duty officer and threatening you with false imprisonment. She immediately got on her radio. This is Rivera, I need Detective Walsh in here now. The Internal Affairs detective appeared within seconds, a thin, sharp-faced man in his 40s who looked like he'd spent years cleaning up messes made by dirty cops. Show him the messages, Detective Rivera instructed. Detective Walsh photographed each text with his own phone, then started making calls. Badge number 4721 corresponds to Daniel Castellanos, currently on administrative leave pending domestic violence charges involving his wife Maria. He paused, listening to someone on the other end. And get this, he's not authorized to make psychiatric holds. He's traffic division, no mental health training or certification. My stomach dropped. So the paperwork he's bringing? Completely fraudulent, Detective Walsh confirmed. We're looking at impersonating a mental health professional, falsifying official documents, and conspiracy to commit kidnapping. Through the window, I could see more security guards positioning themselves near the elevators. Jennifer returned with a man in scrubs who introduced himself as Dr. Patel, the hospital psychiatrist. I've reviewed your intake evaluation and medical history, he said, settling into a chair. There's absolutely no clinical basis for involuntary commitment. Your mental status exam was completely normal, you're oriented and making rational decisions about your safety. If anyone presents psychiatric hold papers, they'll be medically invalid. My phone rang, Mark again, the 15th call of the night. Detective Rivera nodded for me to answer while she started her recording equipment. Mark, Detective Rivera told me not to talk to. Sarah, don't listen to them. They don't understand your medical situation like I do. Mark's voice was tight with controlled panic. Danny's with me now. He's reviewed all your psychiatric records. We're in the hospital parking garage. What parking garage level? Detective Rivera whispered. Mark, which level are you on? B2, near the emergency department. Sarah, I need you to come downstairs alone. Don't bring any hospital staff with you. This is between us. Detective Rivera was already texting someone, probably security, about their location. Tell him you can't walk because of your rib injuries. I can't walk very well. The doctor said I shouldn't. Then we'll come up to you. What room number? The question hung in the air. If I gave him my room number, Mark and his corrupt cop brother would walk directly into our trap. But they'd also be coming to a location where I was trapped in a hospital bed, injured and vulnerable. Room 847, I said, meeting Detective Rivera's eyes. We'll be right there. Sarah, don't sign anything or talk to anyone until we arrive. Danny has legal documents that need your signature. What kind of documents? Voluntary commitment papers. It's better than the alternative. Mark's voice carried a threat wrapped in fake concern. If you don't sign voluntarily, Danny has to use the emergency psychiatric hold. That goes on your permanent record. The manipulation was breathtaking. Even now, even with multiple detectives listening, Mark was trying to coerce me into participating in my own disappearance. I'll see you soon, I said, and hung up. Detective Walsh was coordinating positions with the security team. They'll take the elevator to the 8th floor in approximately 3 minutes. We'll have officers positioned at both stairwells and the elevator bank. What about the fake documents? I asked. The moment Danny presents fabricated psychiatric hold papers, he's committed multiple felonies. Detective Rivera checked her weapon discreetly. And when Mark tries to coerce your signature, that's conspiracy to kidnap. My hands were shaking now, 6 months of planning about to culminate in the next few minutes. Through the door's glass panel, I could see the elevator numbers climbing. 3, 4, 5. They're coming, I whispered. Detective Rivera positioned herself beside the door, just out of sight. Sarah, you've been incredibly brave to get this far. Just a few more minutes and this nightmare is over. The elevator dinged at the 8th floor, and I heard Mark's familiar voice echoing down the hallway, talking to someone about getting this handled quickly and quietly. They had no idea they were walking into the most well-documented domestic violence arrest in NYPD history. The footsteps in the hallway grew louder, accompanied by Mark's voice and another man's deeper tone discussing standard procedure and minimal resistance expected. Detective Rivera pressed herself against the wall beside the door, hand resting casually near her weapon, while Detective Walsh positioned himself behind the bathroom door where he'd have a clear view of everything. My heart was hammering so hard I was sure everyone could hear it. 6 months of careful planning, 183 days of documentation, and it all came down to the next 5 minutes. Room 847, Mark's voice carried clearly through the door. Remember, she's been having paranoid episodes. If she starts talking about evidence or recordings, that's just part of her delusional thinking. Got it. I've handled plenty of psychiatric emergencies. The second voice had the casual authority of someone used to being obeyed without question. The voluntary commitment forms are cleaner, but if she refuses, we use the 72-hour emergency hold. Detective Walsh was recording everything on his phone, these two idiots having no idea they were confessing to multiple felonies in a hospital hallway surrounded by security cameras. The knock came exactly as I'd expected, firm, official, designed to intimidate. Sarah? It's Mark. I'm here with Officer Castellanos to help you. Officer Castellanos. Not detective, not his brother Danny. He was using his badge to legitimize this whole performance. Come in, I called, my voice barely steady. The door opened and Mark stepped in first, looking exactly like the concerned boyfriend he'd been practicing to be. His hair was combed, his shirt was clean, and if I hadn't been lying here with his handprints bruised around my throat, I might have believed his performance myself. Behind him came Danny Castellanos, shorter than Mark, stockier, with a kind of mustache that screamed 20-year veteran who peaked in traffic division. He wore his badge prominently on his belt and carried a manila folder thick with what I assumed were the fabricated psychiatric documents. Baby, thank God you're okay. Mark moved toward my bed with practiced concern while Danny hung back, assessing the room with cop eyes that missed Detective Rivera positioned behind the open door. How are you feeling, Sarah? Danny's voice carried artificial warmth. Mark explained about your medication issues and the episodes you've been having. Episodes? I kept my voice confused, vulnerable. Let them think I was playing into their narrative. The paranoid thoughts, the violent outbursts, throwing things off the balcony. Mark sat on the edge of my bed, his presence making my skin crawl. Dr. Reeves said this might happen with the dosage changes. Danny opened his folder, pulling out official-looking papers that probably looked convincing to anyone who didn't know they were complete fiction. Sarah, I've reviewed your psychiatric treatment history. The Mount Sinai hospitalization, the medication adjustments, the incidents at home. Mark's been documenting everything because he's worried about your safety. What kind of documentation? I asked, genuinely curious about their fabricated evidence. Photos of property damage during your episodes. Statements from neighbors about disturbing behavior. Medical records showing your declining mental state. Danny spread several papers on my bedside table. This is why we need to get you proper help before something worse happens. Mark reached over and took my hand, his touch making my whole body tense. Sarah, I know you're scared and confused. The medication makes it hard to remember things clearly. But I've been taking care of you through all of this. Taking care of me. The man who'd put me in this hospital bed was claiming he'd been protecting me. The audacity was breathtaking. What do you need me to sign? I asked, playing along with their script. Danny smiled, probably thinking this was going easier than expected. Just voluntary admission forms for a 72-hour psychiatric evaluation. It's much better than the alternative emergency commitment. And if I don't sign voluntarily? Then I have to use my authority as a police officer to place you on an emergency psychiatric hold for your own safety. Danny's voice carried just enough threat to make his meaning clear. That becomes part of your permanent record, affects employment, housing applications, everything. Mark squeezed my hand tighter. Please don't make this harder than it needs to be, Sarah. Sign the papers so we can get you help. I looked at both of them, Mark with his fake concern, Danny with his fraudulent authority, and realized they actually believed they were going to pull this off. They thought I was just going to sign away my freedom and disappear into whatever psychiatric facility they'd arranged. Can I read the forms first? I asked. Of course, Danny said, pushing the papers closer. Take your time. What he didn't see was Detective Rivera stepping silently into view behind him, her badge now visible and her expression absolutely deadly. Daniel Castellanos, NYPD badge 4721, she said quietly. Danny spun around, his face going white as he realized there was another cop in the room, one who definitely wasn't part of his plan. You're under arrest. The silence that followed Detective Rivera's words stretched for exactly 3 seconds, long enough for Danny to process that his carefully orchestrated plan had just collapsed, but not long enough for him to think of a way out. Detective Rivera, NYPD Domestic Violence Unit, she continued, her badge now clearly visible. And you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit kidnapping, falsifying official documents, and impersonating a mental health professional. Mark's hand tightened on mine like a vice. Sarah, what the hell is going on? Why are there police here? Danny was faster on the uptake, his cop instincts kicking in even as his world imploded. This is a misunderstanding. I'm here in my official capacity responding to a psychiatric emergency. Your official capacity in traffic division doesn't include psychiatric holds, Detective Walsh said, emerging from behind the bathroom door with his internal affairs badge prominently displayed. And you're currently on administrative leave, which means you have no official capacity at all. The color drained from Danny's face completely. Mark looked between the detectives like he was watching a tennis match, still not understanding that months of careful planning had just trapped him. Mark Thompson? Detective Rivera pulled out handcuffs. You're under arrest for assault in the first degree, strangulation in the first degree, criminal threatening, and conspiracy to commit kidnapping. Conspiracy to commit what? Mark's voice shot up an octave. Sarah, tell them this is crazy. Tell them about your psychiatric problems. I pulled my hand free from his grip, feeling 6 months of fear finally transform into something that looked like justice. Mark, I don't have psychiatric problems. But I do have 47 photographs, 12 audio recordings, and video footage of you beating me unconscious over the past 6 months. The look that crossed his face was pure, undiluted shock. For 30 seconds, Mark Thompson, the man who'd controlled every aspect of my life through fear and violence, was completely speechless. That's impossible, he finally whispered. You never. I would have seen. Voice memo app with the screen turned off, I said, pulling out my phone. Amazing what you can record when someone thinks you're too scared to fight back. Danny was frantically shuffling through his fake documents as Detective Walsh photographed each page. These psychiatric hold forms are completely fabricated. Wrong case numbers, non-existent doctor signatures, invalid facility codes. We're looking at 15 separate felony counts just from the paperwork. Plus the text messages threatening forced commitment, Detective Rivera added, snapping handcuffs around Mark's wrists. Your brother was kind enough to identify himself by badge number and detail his criminal conspiracy in writing. Mark was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. Sarah, how long have you been planning this? Every day since October 23rd, when you gave me that black eye and told me I deserved it for embarrassing you at your friend's party. I sat up straighter in the hospital bed, ignoring the pain in my ribs. 183 days of documentation, Mark. Every bruise, every threat, every time you destroyed something I cared about. You can't do this to me, he said, his voice taking on the wheedling tone he used when he wanted to manipulate me into forgiveness after his worst episodes. Sarah, I love you. Everything I did was because I was trying to help you. The medication made you unstable. I was never on medication that made me unstable. I was never hospitalized at Mount Sinai. Dr. Reeves doesn't exist. My voice was getting stronger with every word. But Detective Rivera has recordings of you creating that entire fictional narrative on the phone tonight. Danny finally understood the scope of what they'd walked into. Mark, shut up. Don't say another word without a lawyer. Too late. Mark had been confessing to fabricating evidence for the past 2 hours, all of it recorded by multiple law enforcement agencies. Detective Walsh was reading Danny his rights while hospital security cleared the hallway of curious onlookers. Through the window, I could see Jennifer coordinating with what looked like a crime scene photographer, documenting everything for the prosecution. The DA's office is sending someone over, Detective Rivera told me as they prepared to escort both men out. With this level of evidence and the conspiracy charges, they're talking about requesting remand without bail. Mark looked back at me from the doorway, handcuffed and flanked by officers, his face a mask of rage and disbelief. This isn't over, Sarah. Actually, Detective Rivera said pleasantly, it really is. 6 months later, I sat in the Manhattan District Attorney's office watching Mark Thompson accept a plea deal that would send him to prison for 4 to 8 years. The man who had controlled my life through fear and violence looked smaller somehow in his orange jumpsuit, flanked by public defenders who'd spent weeks trying to negotiate down from the original charges. Mr. Thompson, do you understand that by accepting this plea, you're admitting to assault in the first degree, strangulation in the first degree, criminal threats, and conspiracy to commit kidnapping? Judge Martinez asked from her position at the bench they'd set up for the proceeding. Yes, Your Honor, Mark mumbled, not meeting my eyes from across the room. His brother Danny had already been sentenced to 3 years for his role in the conspiracy, plus termination from NYPD and permanent disbarment from law enforcement. The fake psychiatric documents he'd created were now being used as teaching examples at the police academy, a case study in how badly corruption investigations could go when officers decided to help their criminal relatives. District Attorney Sarah Chen, we shared a first name, which felt oddly appropriate, had called my documentation the most comprehensive domestic violence evidence file in the history of Manhattan prosecutions. The 47 photographs, 12 audio recordings, and video footage had built such an airtight case that Mark's lawyers never even considered taking it to trial. The defendant will serve a minimum of 4 years in state prison, followed by 5 years of supervised probation with a permanent restraining order prohibiting any contact with Ms. Collins, Judge Martinez continued. Additionally, the defendant forfeits any claim to shared property and will pay $47,000 in restitution for medical expenses and relocation costs. $47,000. Almost exactly what Mark had cost me in medical bills, therapy sessions, and the security deposit on my new apartment in Brooklyn, 15 minutes from Kate's house. The number felt like cosmic justice. Jennifer from the hospital was sitting behind me in the gallery. She'd become an unexpected friend during the months of legal proceedings, checking in regularly to see how I was healing. Dr. Martinez had also attended several hearings, her medical testimony about strangulation statistics helping prosecutors argue for the maximum sentence. Ms. Collins, would you like to make a victim impact statement? The judge asked. I prepared something elaborate, pages of eloquent words about trauma and recovery and the long road back to feeling safe. But when I stood up and looked at Mark, really looked at him, all I could think about was that night in the hospital when Detective Rivera had asked how long this had been going on. Your Honor, for 183 days I documented every bruise, every threat, every attempt to control and diminish me. I did it because I refused to become another statistic, another woman whose abuser walked away with a slap on the wrist. I paused, my voice steadier than I'd expected. Mark Thompson spent 8 months trying to convince me I was powerless. Today, he learned that the woman he thought was helpless had been building the case that would put him behind bars. I glanced at the defense table where Mark was staring at his hands. I want other women to know that documentation works. Evidence matters. And sometimes the person they think is weakest is actually 2 steps ahead, planning their own rescue. Judge Martinez nodded. Thank you, Ms. Collins. Mr. Thompson, you'll be remanded immediately to begin serving your sentence. As the bailiff led Mark away, he finally looked at me one last time. But instead of the fear I'd expected to feel, all I saw was a broken man who'd confused cruelty with power, violence with control. The nightmare that had started with a nurse's simple question, how long has this been going on, was finally over. And I was free.